So thank you. My name is Raef Granger, and I will give you a brief overview of what we hope to accomplish today. And it's designed to just be a short but a broad overview. So what we're going to cover is the topic of purpose. And then what I hope to do is give you some tools in your tool bag on how to approach maybe finding the purpose or looking for the purpose in your life. Now, when I first came upon this topic, I thought, yeah, purpose, great. Oh my gosh, it's like so deep, it's really easy to do. And then when I dove into it to get prepared, it dawned on me how big a concept it was. At least I found it big. And I couldn't help but every time I kept trying to think about purpose and what to maybe educate you all on, I kept thinking of porpoise. And so, no, we're not here to talk about porpoise. It wasn't just me. Monty shared that he too kept thinking about porpoise. So at least the two of us are equally weird. So today's topic is purpose. And but before we go there, a little brief introduction in me. I always think it's important to know who your speaker is. So my name is Raef Granger. I'm a business coach, and I do corporate group trainings, and I do speaking. And I mainly focus on the small business owner and the micropreneur. I do need coaching, I do corporate group training events, and I have these things called Masterclass, which is, Noelle nailed it, don't even need to go there again. I am looking to open a third. I have two going right now live in Portsmouth. Some are live, some part live and virtual, but if it's interest to you, I love talking to entrepreneurs. Even if you just have a question, you're not bothering me, go to my website, I'd love to hear from you. Prior to that, I was an attorney and ran a law practice here in Portsmouth. I've been an attorney for over 20 years, and prior to that, I was a high school English teacher. And so that's kind of my background as to how I came to where we are here. Purpose. This is what it really filtered down to me, is what does it mean to work and live with purpose? And then that question led me to the bigger question, which is, what is our purpose? And I realized that is, in essence, what I'm helping people do with their business and in their lives. I had a period of time where I sort of lost my way. I lost my way during my law practice. I just was kind of in a rut. Didn't even realize that I was really not that happy about what I was doing. And fortunately, I was able to have my new purpose come out in life, which is what I like to do now, which is to coach business owners. And so I wanted to share with you some of the tools that I used to get there. And that's one of the specialities that I have. I like to dial down and give people actual things that they can do to achieve what they want to do. I was just working with one of my local business owners here, and she had a struggle within her business, and she was like, boy, Raef, you really just, not only do we get to cover this topic and I get to think about it, but you then give me the tools to handle it, and that's what I do strive to do. Okay, so how? And then we're going to spend most of our time on this next slide. I've come up with 6. The slide's out of date, but that's my fault because I didn't think of the 6th thing until a couple days ago. But we're going to cover how. Okay, how do we find our life's purpose? Step 1, meditate. Now, meditation's been a new thing for me, and I just started bringing it about 2 years ago into my business group. So I've been practicing meditation for about 2 years, and it works really well. If you've never meditated before, it can seem pretty daunting. The best way to meditate is just to start meditating. I recommend using the Headspace app. That works really well for me. You just hit play, and Andy Petticombe, he's my mentor, he guides you through meditation. By the way he's my mentor, I'll come into for number 4 under reading. But what I recommend you do when you're meditating is you're not trying to meditate on your life's purpose. I think that would be next to impossible. Maybe some of you could do that. I don't know. For me, it would be way too daunting. You're meditating just to meditate. Why? Because meditation becomes an access for you to become present and awake, or present and aware. So it lets the body come in, settle down, and it lets the mind settle down. You'll find that a lot of times through life, we're running, going, and our mind never has a chance to settle into whatever it wants to think about. So meditation for me is a great access to let the mind rest to allow what your true purpose might be. And if we have some time and if people have questions on that, we can certainly cover that. Number 2, journal/inquiry. Another method to find your purpose is to journal, to inquire as to yourself. Again, I wouldn't recommend writing on your journal page, what is my life's purpose? To me, that'd be too daunting and I would just stare at the page. Instead, I find probative questions like, what's happening in your life that you don't want to have happen? That's a good probative question. Or, what's not happening in your life that you want to have happen? That's what I'm thinking about for questions for your journal inquiry. What that'll do is, again, just let the mind wander and go to where it wants to discover. A good practice, again, for that is not to try to sit down and do an hour's worth. Just try to do, 10 minutes worth. And you can go to all sorts of places to find other probative questions. But I find that to be a really good method, is to journal. It lets the mind think what it wants to think. Okay, number 3, connections. This is almost like inquiry, but with people. We learn best when in community. I have business mentors. I have, my wife was one of my greatest mentors. We dive into and I ask her these probative questions that are of interest to me, and we just explore them, and we just try to find out what there is to be discovered. So even in today's world of COVID, I recommend reach out to people, do the Zoom coffee meeting, do the Zoom cocktail meeting, eat lunch together over Zoom, and make it of purpose, pun intended. Make it where you have a goal is to say, hey, I've been thinking about this thought. What do you think, to your friend? And then that'll foster more inquiry and is done in community. Reading. Reading is probably the best way to find purpose, I think. So I have a list of books that I'm going to recommend, and you can also find them on my website, and I think the information's dropped into the chat. You do have to type it in, the URL, because it's a hidden URL. It's just for you, Creative Mornings. So it is raefgranger.com/reads. So in case I go too fast, you don't have to worry about that you missed one of these books. It'll be on that website, which is also dropped in the chat, I believe. Okay, book number 1, Success is a Choice. It's an older book. It's probably been around by like 20 years, written by Rick Pitino. I'm not a huge sports guy, but he's known as a pretty famous basketball coach for Kentucky and Kansas, or both. So what I love about this book is it teaches that entrepreneurialism isn't just some thing you're born into. Like, I think sometimes we think, that Steve Jobs was born into being as entrepreneurial as he is, and then only certain people can be that successful. This book really dials in and lets it be really accessible to all people, and really empowered. When I read it, it empowered me to think like, oh, if I put the work in, I can be successful in whatever it is I want to do. So I recommend that. That's a great start. It's an easy read. And even if you're not a sports fan, it's not a sports book. It's just he uses what he does as a coach and he translates it into business. A second key book for me is EntreLeadership by Dave Ramsey. Now, Dave Ramsey is not so necessarily known out here on the East Coast. He's mainly known for his Total Money Makeover book. And that teaches people how to budget and live within a budget, which that's all fantastic. You want to read that too. But what's really neat about this book is as he was growing his business, he began to coach and teach his leaders how to run a business, how to hire, how to fire, how to not, hire crazy, as he calls it, just all this great business knowledge. And he began to teach his leaders that. And then he looked around the room one day, and there were people would say, hey, Dave, can I bring my wife to this? She's running her own business. Can I bring my cousin to this? He's running a business. And he looked around the room, and he had like 300 people, 200 of which weren't his staff. So he's like, maybe I'm onto something here. So he wrote this book, and he has this whole separate category of helping and supporting business people. So what I like about EntreLeadership is each chapter is sort of self-contained, and you can learn a lot about business or what you want to know about business just from reading those chapters. Plus, he's a great writer, and it's super entertaining to read. Another book that I recommend is called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And what I like about that book is it's counterintuitive. A lot of us think in our lives that I have a dead branch of an idea. I should prune that. What Dr. Henry Cloud teaches is even if you have a perfectly good, viable idea or thing going on in your life, you actually may want to prune it. He describes it as a rose bush. He's like, a gardener will have a rose bush that'll produce, let's say, 15 roses. But the gardener might want to select 12 of those roses, and they'll sever those other branches to make the 12 roses that she wants turn exactly the way she wants them to be, as much as she can control, on the theory that with those 3 other branches on perfectly good roses that are pruned, nutrient soil from the earth can then support those other 12. So that was the first time I ever heard about, we should prune good ideas or ideas that might make us money in our business. That's pretty interesting. So I recommend that. And of course, the parallels aren't just for business. It can be good in life, just in general as well. The other book I recommend is a book my wife turned me on to called The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. So these are all books, if you're like, I want to try to find my life's purpose. Again, just a quick repeat. Meditate, journal, go with deep connections, or read books. Surrender Experiment, fascinating read. It's literally a page turner. I don't even want to talk too much about it because it'll ruin what's in there. But the premise of it is the author, Michael Singer, decides what would my life be like if when presented with opportunity, I ignored my preference and said yes to most everything. So he might be like, hey, Raef, do you want to go talk at Creative Mornings? Not really, which isn't true. I wanted to, but no, not really. But he would say yes to that. And so he records what happened when he opened himself up to the universe that way, which I thought was just fascinating. How are we doing on time? Good? Okay. Loving What Is, Byron Katie. Oh, this is one of my favorite books. She goes through this thing called The Work. Again, not enough time in this format to go through it. I could talk the whole talk on just loving what is. I use The Work all the time. That can help you with journaling. She has tons of questions and stuff in there, and it really kind of mines your inner thoughts about things and can get you detached from basically your own opinions and judgments about things that are driving you crazy, right? We drive ourselves crazy. Her main thought is, it's not the things in the world that are happening to us that upset us or drive us crazy. It's our thoughts about the things in the world that are driving us crazy. And that's a very powerful concept if you think about it. Because if it's our thoughts, then we have the ability to change our thoughts. And if we change our thoughts, we can change our experience. So that's a very powerful book. I recommend that. The last book is Solve for Happy by Mo Gaudet. Again, I almost don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to ruin the premise of it. But the premise of it is he is an engineer. He was a Google X engineer, and he went through a period of life where he wasn't so happy, and he engineered. He's like, can I use my engineer skills to discover happiness? And sure enough, he came up with 12 formulas, 12 methods of happiness, and he describes that in his book. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And so that works really well. The last I saved, which makes the most sense, on purpose. The last is, I skipped over yoga. No, I didn't get to yoga yet, so I'm still in reading. The last is, because I didn't put this in the slide, Find Your Why by Simon Sinek, okay? It's an old video. Type into Google, Simon Sinek, the why, and he'll describe, it's the one with him with a whiteboard, and he's got circles on it, okay? And he talks about how you can discover your why, whether it's your business. He talks about it in the vein of business, but it works for your life too. Must watch. I think it's 18 minutes long, and then there are books on that as well if you want to dive deeper into what Simon teaches there. So those are my methods there, okay? The last one for me is yoga. I found that, again, my wife is a yoga teacher. She owns a local yoga studio called Soulfire. And she started practicing about, 22 years ago. And she said, hey, you want to go practice yoga with me? And I'm like, not really. That's for women, and you guys are going to chant and float, and I don't want to do that. Well, she took me there, and I'm like, oh, wow, this was a lot more challenging than I thought it was. And I really started to enjoy it. But I really began a deeper yoga practice probably about 4 years ago. I went to some yoga trainings. I've actually become accidentally certified as a Baptiste Power Yoga instructor. But through that journey, I realized that yoga has enabled me to find my purpose, like just the practice of it itself. Now, again, I don't go to the yoga studio and go, oh, what's my purpose today? And then go in a half pigeon and it pops out. But what it does do is just through the regular practice of that exercise, it's sort of designed to get the stuff out of your way, at least it does for me, out of my way, to allow what I want to have happen in my life to happen in my life. Now, I suspect, for me it's yoga, but I suspect for others that could be cycling, or it could be running, or it could be weightlifting. It's not for me. When I lift weights, I don't seem to discover the true meaning of life, but maybe it does for other people. That's why I put parentheses exercise. The last thing, which is not on the slide, of a way to go find purpose is go out and do. I can't express that enough. I think the natural tendency for us is to say, oh, I want to do something. Okay, let me learn everything there is to learn about it. And we'll read blogs, and we'll read books, and we'll talk to a million people. But we won't necessarily go out and do it. What I recommend you do is, if the spark of inspiration hits you, you want to write a novel, you want to start a podcast, you want to change jobs, whatever it is, start to go out and explore that without trying to learn everything first, all right? Because you'll, A, die from analysis paralysis most likely. B, when you go out and do, funny things happen. You start to bump into people that'll provide you, or situations that'll provide you the exact information you were lacking before, the exact thing to do, and just organically things will happen. The universe will sort of open up for you and start to provide the pathway. I can't tell you how much going out and doing is important. And then, just like the surrender experiment, saying yes to those opportunities when they present themselves, including volunteering. I don't necessarily mean volunteering for the charitable purpose, which of course is wonderful. I just mean if there's something that you want to do and you're interested in, a lot of times you can volunteer your way and say, hey, can I learn to make sandwiches behind the counter with you? I've always wanted to open a sub shop or something like that. 9 times out of 10, the owner will be like, yeah, and they'll probably hire you. So that's kind of what I mean for go out and do. Okay.